Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the Crux3. This is the 1S version, and unfortunately for some, this is ExpressLRS only, so you'll need to have an ExpressLRS module, or if it's not for the jumper T-Light, one of the other modules that's available out there. Otherwise, there's no FR Sky or other protocol option. It's ExpressLRS only. It comes with an extra battery mat, some rubber bands, some extra props, some screws, some nuts. Typical accessory baggie. Camera control board, so you can change the settings on your Caddx Ant, which is the FPV camera. It comes with this canopy that fits the Insta360 Go 2 as well as the Caddx Peanut. The motors are 1202.5, 11,500 kV. On those motors are the Gem Fan 75mm press-on props. The all-in-one flight controller, we've seen that before. Of course, we've got our little plastic cube antenna on there. It's an F411 processor, and it's got a power switchable VTX up to 200 milliwatts. The ESC on the all-in-one is rated for 5 amps with a peak or burst of 6 amps for 3 seconds. The bottom carbon fiber looks to be 2.5 millimeters thick, and motor post to motor post looks like 115 millimeters. It weighs 40.5 grams. I flew it primarily on this 450 milliamp 1S battery, but the flight video you're going to see is on the 720 milliamp 1S battery. With the 720, it weighs just about 58 grams. With the 450, it weighs just over 53.25 grams. With the TPU canopy, it weighs just about 44.5 grams. If we add on the Insta360 Go 2, it weighs 71 grams. And if we add that battery that you're gonna see in the flight video, it weighs 88 grams. Note, I used a soldering iron to burn a hole in the side of my canopy because I just could not get the camera mounted in this canopy with the wire attached to its connection point on the flight controller. So I had to route it through here. And it all comes in this case, which has got Happy Model on the top. And that's it. No stickers. So as I said in the quick roll, my preference is to fly the 450 milliamp, and you get a reduced flight time, of course. But I just like the agility, and I like how it allows me to kind of just go anywhere I want to, and I feel a little bit lighter and I feel a little bit more agile. But in this particular case, this was actually, I think, fairly late in the day, but just before dinner time. I think I got off work a touch early, and I was choosing just to burn off the battery because it was charged. I didn't want to leave it charged, so I wanted to get it back down, and I was having so much fun I ended up over discharging it just a touch. Plus, in the footage that you're going to see with the Insta360 Go 2, I'm flying this battery. So you get to compare the weight difference between if you add the TPU print canopy as well as the Insta360 Go 2, or maybe comparing it to a Caddx Peanut versus just flying it straight analog. You get to experience the difference in performance as well as flight time with the same battery. So there can be a benefit there. That's the primary reason why I'm showing you the video with the 720 milliamp battery on it, is you get that straight comparison in one flight video using the same battery, 2 different configurations. It's still good fun. I just like it a little. I just like my quads a little bit lighter, and you know, I don't get too fussed about a flight time that's under 3 minutes. I just take a handful of batteries with me and just go fly them all. But I know that there's a split in our population. Some people want maximum flight time per battery, and other people just want to buy more batteries so they can have all the flights they want. So, wherever camp you're in, maybe there's another camp I'm missing. There you go. But, you know, it's one of those weird things that where the Crux3, it was 2S and 1S, but it was really most viable. I'm talking about the original one. It was most viable on 2S, and it was good fun. So this is 1S, and if you like 1S, and I know why people like 1S, is one of the factors is it's lighter, it's safer, it has less inertia, so if you hit something, you're less likely to cause damage, and the batteries are cheap. Although in my experience, I go through more 1S batteries than I do multi-cell batteries. My multi-cell batteries tend to last me quite a bit longer, and I'm not sure why that is. But at any rate, you know, 1S has become quite popular, and so now we have a straight 1S version of the Crux3, and it's ExpressLRS only. So you're going to need to get yourself a module if you like this flight and you like this quad. Because Happy Model at this time, I'm guessing by the looks of this board, Happy Model is moving away from doing SPI of any other sort. So if you want to fly a future Happy Model product that has an all-in-one board in it, we're probably going to need to have ExpressLRS, so yet maybe another reason to go out and make that investment into ExpressLRS. You know, if you follow the channel, I'm an advocate of ExpressLRS. I think it's been just a great boon to the micro development. And I know people who fly larger quads are all about ExpressLRS too. I think if you fly Crossfire or you've got Ghost or Tracer or something like that, I think you're in good shape. I just don't think you're going to find all-in-one boards with those protocols. So, you know, ExpressLRS if you're going to be doing something microcentric or using flying a quad that has an all-in-one board in it. So this flight time is going to just keep on going and going. I need to check my notes here as I've gotten long in the tooth. I've forgotten how long the flight is. 5 minutes and 16 seconds as I look back on my notes. So we've got a little while to go yet. This was actually a really nice day. Sun's a little low. This camera doesn't show well in this sun. The camera is the Caddx Ant, which I think was a good move. I think more people approve of the Caddx Ant than they do the Runcam Nano 3. Oftentimes one of the things that I hear about the Runcam Nano 3 is the purple hue and maybe the too much fisheye. I don't get too bothered by it, but that's one of the things I hear. I think more people are more satisfied with the Caddx Ant, but the field of view of the Caddx Ant is smaller, so you get a little bit less of a sensation of speed, a little less of a sensation of that sort of speeder racing in the forest sort of thing that we oftentimes reference, or at least us guys that have been around for a while. And we saw that video flying in the French forest, I think it was. One of those things that got many of us hooked on FPV and quads. If you bind this up, I believe you have to bind it in your 250 milliwatts. I think that's just kind of where the board's at right now. You don't have to type a command because it's going to come with a betaflight 4.3, and you'll find in your configurator that on the receivers page there is a bind button. So you click that, you go into your ExpressLRS Lewis script that you've got on your radio after installing your module, and you do the binding there, and you're all set to go. If you do want to run 500 megahertz on your packet side, you do have to issue some a code. I'll look that up real quick. I should have had that on my screen already, shouldn't I? I've only got a few seconds left here, but you type set space ExpressLRS underscore rate underscore index equals 0, and then type save, hit enter, and then you just reboot your flight controller or power it on and power it off, and it'll be bound again if it was already bound. And that will allow you to run the 500 hertz on the packet rate. So there we go, end of the flight. I'd over discharged, like I said, just a touch, probably 10 seconds too much. So you might want to chop 10 minutes or 10 seconds off of that flight time that you see on screen of 5:16. And here's our HD flight. So of course I've got the TPU printed canopy on there, and I've got my Insta360 Go 2. I do not have a Caddx Peanut. I probably should just order one because they are cheaper than the Go 2, I believe. And hopefully they're just as good and just as durable, because I've been actually pretty happy with my Go 2 recently. There was another firmware update that came out a couple of weeks ago. Slapped that on there, and I think it's been a lot better. Initially, my experience with the Go 2 wasn't very good. Oh, there we go, that punch out. I wanted to include this particular flight for that reason as well, because when you add this much weight to the quad, it changes its performance, and I think how I recovered from that punch out kind of shows that, because I think if I were to do all the other punch outs that I have where I kind of pull out earlier and I'm a little bit smoother, you know, we could be confused about that. So it's not going to be as aggressive. You can see on some of these turns that I'm getting far wider. I just don't have the authority in this powertrain in order to be able to turn much faster. So if you want to fly with a Go 2 type of camera on top with the canopy, you do need to understand that you're not going to have the same performance than you do without that extra weight. That should be known. That should be normal, especially for micros. Well, micros are weight sensitive. We have to give up certain things if we want other things. And if you want to do your recording with a Go 2 or some other camera that mounts up there like the Caddx Peanut, yeah, we have to give up a little bit of performance. And when you're doing punch outs, you pretty much drive into your peak. It doesn't have any throw, even with the extra weight. It just doesn't have that sort of power. It's 1S. I haven't flown a 1S quad that had much throw in it. If you get the wind in the right direction, you might be able to produce some throw. But otherwise, you know, it's just one of those things. Of course, this flight comes in at 4 minutes and 18 seconds, carrying this weight. If you fly slower, say you want to go out to a particular location and just get some footage, you want to do some sort of filming sort of flight, you could expect to get substantially much more, because on these hard turns, some of those hard turns are at 100% throttle, especially after the first minute or two of the flight. I know that when I'm doing 180 turns, I'm going 100% throttle, and I'm using a pitch to control my height rather than using the throttle. So that's something to consider there, is if you're wanting to fly fast like this, you need to be you need to understand that you're going to be pushing 100% on some hard turns. That's, again, it's weight versus thrust. Part of your thrust is the number of cells on your battery, and that's what we have to work with. It's not a downside. I'm just trying to make sure everybody's aware. I thought it was really good fun, and with ExpressLRS, you know, recently you may have noticed on the channel I have not, I've had a couple, I think it's 2 weeks where I maybe only posted 1 or 2 videos. And I have been converting a lot of my other quads that I fly just for fun when I'm not out flying for review purposes over to ExpressLRS. I've been buying the little tiny light receivers. I've been buying the Happy Model ones, as well as the JAHE MCU ones. I've been buying those 2 brands just because they've been available and they have a little square cube antenna. And I've been putting those on my other quads. Well, at this point, I think I've kind of talked myself into something previously that I have to understand that I was just lying to myself. I think ExpressLRS and the 500 hertz packet rate makes it feel more connected for me. When I compare equal quads and, you know, even the ½ gram weight that you add and adding, say, an EP2 type receiver, it flies like you're just pointing it in the direction you want it to go. Previously, I've said that I could tell in whoops and flying inside, but I can tell outside too. I'm going all in on ExpressLRS because of the feel. I feel like I can fly, just point it in the direction I go, and it goes there. Even with extra weight, I felt much more under control than I have with FrSky SPI base protocols. Again, I'm not saying anything about Ghost protocol or Crossfire or anything like that. This is just about me and micros and the ExpressLRS. I love how it feels in the flight. Okay, that flight has ended. No reason to look at my socks or shoes there anymore. We can head back to the desk. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put on screen that command that you have to type in to get the 500 hertz packet rate, which again is set space ExpressLRS _rate _index equals 0, and then you type save as you do with any CLI command, and you hit enter, and then your flight controller reboots. If you're already bound to your module, it doesn't have to be this one, any other module that's ExpressLRS and it's 2.4 gigahertz. If you're already bound, when it reboots, you should be bound again. You'll need to go into your Lewis script though and change it to 500 hertz. That packet rate has to match on both of them. That's pretty straightforward. If you're binding this, again, you'll have a bind button into the betaflight configurator. You click that, you go into your Lewis script on your radio, and you hit the bind on the ExpressLRS Lewis script, and it'll bind up. Of course, there's a host of other things you can do. ExpressLRS has the passphrase binding, which makes things really, really simple. I've been using passphrase binding on all my others. One of the things that concerned me about this overall quad is I actually found it to be really durable. But first, up here, I want to put kind of my VTX test, where I actually circle the house, and I pass through there. If you follow the channel closely, you know that I don't fly out front very often, and that's mainly because a good many times I just can't get good enough video. Plus, it's just safer to be in the backyard. I don't have to worry about one of the kids ducking out front on me or anything. So anyways, I thought at 200 milliwatts, this all-in-one board did really well as far as the clarity in going around the front of my house. Yes, it's analog, so the guys that are used to flying DJI or Caddx Vistas are probably going, no, it's terrible. Well, for analog and micros, this is where we're at still. And then I went over to my neighbor's property, and then we go down below grade, which is below ground level, so we're actually got some ground in our way, and I go down to that little treed creek area, and then I hover behind a cement footer over behind their yard, and, you know, it just... At 200 milliwatts, usually I have to have at least 350 in order to do those things and have much clarity, and I thought it performed very well. Of course, there's a variable to that. I would have to acknowledge that. I've worked with a number of different people when they're trying to solve video problems. One of the variables is your environment, humidity, vegetation, things that are blocking you between there. Water is great at blocking our signal. Also, your module and what you're using and your antennas. So if you're, I'm using the Orca goggles with the Immersion RC module, as well as one Lumineer Axie antenna and one True RC antenna. And I can link those if you want those, but that's my setup. That's how it works. Even if you had my setup in your space, you might not get the same sort of video reception again because environment variables. Maybe your house is close to a cell tower or other sort of interference. Who knows? So anyways, I thought that was pretty impressive. I'll also put some other general flying up there and some crashing. I smoked the top of the house twice. I'll put those crashes first. I just forgot what I was flying and hit the throttle, and it didn't have what I was expecting for a throttle punch, and I just ended up smoking the house, which I guess, I mean, you could tell my props are banged up. And then look at this one over here. That's ridiculous. Yeah, it's kind of bowed up. Anyway, so as far as its durability goes, I have no complaints. I didn't crash it nearly as much with this canopy as well as the my HD camera in there. I didn't crash that nearly as often. One of my concerns about flying it with this canopy and the extra weight is the antenna, the ExpressLRS antenna on the board. There's a little notch or cutout here. Hopefully you can see that. But it's not big enough. You actually, even with, I should point out, there's a UFL down here. So if you wanted to change the whip antenna to something else, you can do that. There's a UFL connector right down there on the board. And this kind of sits on top of that UFL connector. And then we have that little cutout. But it still comes in contact with that antenna. So one of the things I should caution you about is if you have a bunch of crashes or maybe one hard bad crash, one bad luck crash, you could end up damaging that antenna with this canopy on top. Of course, you can remedy that yourself by just trying to maybe take away more of this material or put something underneath this to prop it up more off the board so that it doesn't come in contact with the square antenna that's on the board. I do think this is relatively well designed, though, and wasn't terrible heavy. I really don't have any complaints. I think this was pretty wise to keep this from moving around, because once you get a camera in there, this area becomes pretty stiff, and I think this was key to it, and it's not, I don't think it's 100% infill, so it's not all that heavy. And, of course, I burned mine so that I could get my wire through there. I have seen one other, I think it was... I forget his name. He's a team pilot, a Happy model. He was able to get his camera mounted up without, you know, as far as I could tell from the video and the pictures, he was able to get his camera mounted up without making this modification. I couldn't, and I think this is probably better anyways, because then the tension on your wire just won't be there. It gives you more slack. So, and that's just, I just took a soldering iron, warmed it up, just kind of reamed out a little hole. If you don't like that, you don't have to do that, but that's what I did in order to remedy the issue. There's, of course, other ways you could go about it. Maybe you cut a slot in here so the wires just kind of route up through there. Whatever you want to do, but just kind of sharing my experience. The canopy is really durable. I don't have any issues with that. I think if I find complaints, that's kind of what you do in reviews, right? So I'm concerned about the antenna and that canopy. I should move that over there because I'm probably flying stuff over there, but that canopy and that antenna, so you need to make an adjustment there. There's also some excess motor wire we could get rid of if you were to want to take off a little bit of extra weight. I'm not sure if it's worth it, but you know, if you find you want to venture down that road, that's one to go with. It does look like we have, I'll just zoom in on this. I think this is solid pin PH20 connector, but I'm having troubles being definitive about that. I thought Happy Model was using solid pin, but I just can't quite see that. I'll have to get my magnifying glass out. But that's a good look at the connector down there. Of course, I've talked about PH20 connectors. If they're rolled pins, they tend to wear down over time, and then you got to change them out. My understanding is Newbie Drone has stayed with rolled pins because solid pins actually cause battery problems. I don't know if that's a fact or not. I'm just passing on that information. So if you're out there flying solid pin connectors and you're finding your batteries are dying, let me know. That way I can maybe confirm that myself. I fly so many different things, it's hard for me to blame like a rolled pin versus a solid pin versus a battery issue on any one thing. The pad down here is just regular foam. It's not a huge deal because the rubber band does an adequate job of holding on to the battery. They do give you the extra rubber bands in the bag, but these are your garden variety office sort of rubber bands. So if you need to get a new one, you certainly can. Maybe you want to have a different color. And I just went with the kind of the cross shape. I suppose you could do something else. Maybe you could even just use a strap. take a strap underneath there, a real small light strap. The rubber band doesn't bother me that much, though. It's not pretty to look at, so maybe a black rubber band would have been a nicer touch. Maybe. And then we've got the little foam pad, which keeps the battery off our screw heads. And they are Phillips screws. You know, I always prefer to have the same screw all over the place because it always makes working on things easier. But we didn't in this particular case. And then we have our motor wire motor connectors here still on the board. So if you needed to swap out a motor for some reason, pretty straight, simple. And they did use some of my favorite tape that I call Emax tape, but I'm sure it has a different name. It's always linked down in the video description. I think I've listed it twice, one from Emax and maybe one from Banggood. So depending upon your location, you can find it. This tape is just a bit wider than what I use, but it does the job. I don't really have any complaints. The frame does have motor protection out here in the corners. I think this is exactly the same frame as the Crux3 original, isn't it? I forget. And my Crux3 is back behind the shelf. I should just grab it. But at any rate, yeah, it's real flexible, but it's 1S. You know, it's pretty hollow here in the center, so it's not surprising because you're not really bending the arms. You're flexing all these points here in the center where it's real thin. So in flight, I don't think it makes any dang difference. But if that's important to you, something you should know. We got 4 screws on all the motors. That's a good thing, holding on to the motors. Some people go with 2, some people go with 3. Got 4. I guess if you want to eliminate one and cut some more weight there, it's another opportunity to cut some weight. Shorten your motor wires, maybe drop a screw or 2 on each motor. Yeah, you might get 2 grams possibly, maybe only 1.25 grams. It gives you an opportunity to save some extra weight. Of course, you could put some weight back on and get some better reception possibly by adding a small circular polarized antenna. Of course, I would encourage you to get a light one. ORT has also got some antennas that are very light. They are linear antennas, but they're kind of improved linear antennas than what we see stock coming on most things. This came with the zip tie on it, but this zip tie is mine because I had to cut it in order to get the other canopy on. So when you get yours, you will find it has a zip tie. Mine happened to be black, and mount things up to switch things around. You're going to have to cut yours too. Yeah, it's good fun. ExpressLRS, I think for me, pushes it up to the next level. I think the other question is, do you buy this one? Or do you buy the Nanohawk X? I think that question gets real easy because the Nanohawk X is FrSky SPI. So if you don't have ExpressLRS, that kind of eliminates this as a possibility. I suppose later on we could see a different edition, but as of right now, it's ExpressLRS only. So if you don't have ExpressLRS, then you're probably going to want to go the Nanohawk X route. But if you have ExpressLRS, you've probably also hopefully got D8 support, so you can still fly something like this, and you're trying to make a choice. Which one do I go with? It's a tough choice. And I choose this. I choose the Crux3 with ExpressLRS. I would swap out the connector altogether for an XT30, get some extra performance out of it, probably get some extra flight time out of it as well. But the fact that it's got ExpressLRS built into it, and the fact that I've been swapping out my builds for ExpressLRS and it has that 500 hertz packet rate, it makes a flight feel difference for me. If you maybe are getting started or you're not very comfortable on the sticks, it probably doesn't make any difference to you. But if you're pretty comfortable on the sticks, you're flying in acro mode, and you're looking for that very, what I call a connected feel. It feels like you're just flying the quad rather than telling the quad what to do. And I use that analogy because to me, when I say I'm flying the quad, it means it's doing what I'm commanding it to. But when I say I'm telling, it's that I'm sending it the signal to do what I want it to do, and then it does it. It's a very small difference, but I like that feel. And previously, like I said during the flight footage, I had kind of talked myself out of the fact that there was an actual difference. I thought I could feel it on whoops inside the house, but after swapping out so much stuff, like my current favorite to date, the Rocket Race, which I'll put a link in the video description to the Rocket Race. I've been swapping. I've got 4 of these. I've been swapping them out over to ExpressLRS. ExpressLRS just is. It feels nicer to me. It feels like how quads are supposed to be, you know. And as time goes by, we keep getting equipment improvements, and things keep feeling better and better and better, more like it's supposed to be. So at any rate, I would say if you have the ability to choose either of these, I would choose the Crux3 because of the ExpressLRS. But there's also another choice in there as far as brand, as well as part accessibility. Does maybe a shop close to you sell parts for one of these and not the other? Those are things you have to consider. But I'll have links down in the video description to where you can check these out. If you happen to shop at Banggood, I have a code that I'll have down there. Maker Fire will probably be carrying these. I have a coupon code for that as well. Feel free to use those. Save yourself some money. You know, the cost of all these things are going up, up, up. Speaking of cost, I forgot to report that. Let me look here real quick. Banggood is showing the Crux3 ExpressLRS at $119. So pretty reasonable still, I think. I think that's actually a little bit less than the Nanohawk X last time I looked. You could probably go to other sources and find this cheaper, and I'll link whoever's carrying this down in the video description, of course. As I mentioned, I've got some coupon codes that you can use. I think it's 8% off at Banggood and 5% at Maker Fire, maybe the other way around. I'll put it down in the video description. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comments section below. I appreciate your time. And thanks for watching.